I would say try to consume as much information as you can about the topic that you want to learn, because a lot of it, like with this particular podcast that we're going through right now, you might go through all of it, but remember, all you need to do is pull one piece, what they call one nugget, one little golden trick, whatever you want to call it. That one thing can make the difference. So just like you and I, we spend thousands of dollars going to conferences, listen to a lot of people who are a lot smarter than we are. Sometimes it doesn't apply to us, but other times we look at it and go, that's it. That one, that right there, that idea, I'm going to implement and make me another six figures this year. So when you're reading about it, just be ready to accept the information when you hear it, but just consume what you can, pull out all the nuggets, and just make sure you remember it. That's the biggest thing, because you keep getting so many of them. Write them down, keep them in front of you. Yeah. But that's the biggest thing. Consume information, pull those nuggets out, because those things are what you're going to use to drive your business moving forward.
What's up, everybody? It's Jamel Gibbs. Welcome to another podcast episode. This is the Business and Investing Podcast, where you learn all things business and investing related. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's relatively close to what we've been discussing lately on my YouTube channel, which is the BRRRR strategy, building passive income through your real estate investing endeavors. And the particular topic that we're going to talk about today is something that I personally have not touched on, and that's property management. This is a key component to investing and being able to live that free and wealthy lifestyle that you're looking for altogether. If you're not doing property management properly, or you're not purchasing the properties that you're looking to hold on to the right way, it's going to cause major headaches for you later on. So I brought on an expert today to talk to us about how he makes sure that he purchases these properties the right way. He's going to tell us exactly what to look for before purchasing the property so that we keep ourselves out of muddy waters. But in addition to that, he's also going to talk to us about managing the property the right way. Ed ODaniel, what's up, my man?
Hey, Jamel. It's awesome, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, it's a pleasure, brother. Looking forward to the information that we're going to cover today, man. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, man?
Sure, absolutely, man. I know we had a little bit of a chat in Tampa, kind of where we met at one of our last events, but I have been investing since 2005. I'm a wholesaler, rehabber. I've kind of gone down that road. I don't do too much of that anymore. A lot of times I've been coaching. I spent several years just kind of coaching for some of the national vendors about real estate investing, but I've kind of fallen and settled into property management. I own a property management company here in St. Louis, Missouri, that we service our clients with. And I really just enjoy that. I enjoy helping people understand how to buy rentals, what to look for, and be able to sit back and achieve financial freedom through rentals. Especially with the BRRRR method, we were talking, and that's kind of how I got started. I did start investing in 2005 and 6, and I just tell people I probably have done everything wrong that you can do buying rental properties, from not being too greedy on the BRRRR method, which I'll hop into in just a minute, to hiring the wrong contractors, paying too much for repairs because I had no idea what I should be paying, what's a reasonable, fair amount, other than just getting a bid thinking that's how much stuff is going to be. And just being able to gauge all that stuff. And that's what I help my clients deal with now is, of course, contractors need to make money, but at the same point, there are reasonable costs that you should get, making sure contractors don't overcharge you. So I got completely taken advantage of by $10,000 plus or more on jobs, because I was just at the time too stupid, and I'll use that word, to sit back and know better, to know that there are certain national costs that you have for painting and flooring and roofing and other things, to at least know what to expect. So that's one of those things I love, helping people out understand those costs. And then when you're buying rentals on the BRRRR method, what should you look at? What should you do? What should you include in those costs? And if you can't do all of these things in and then factor it under whatever your percentage is, whether you're at 80% loan to value, I know that some people are going up to 80% on cash out refis, but you and I were talking, I'd much rather keep it down lower, more towards 70%. That way you get 30% of total equity in the property whenever you buy it, and it's completely fixed up. So the thing I try to educate people about on the BRRRR method is, when you're looking at properties, you need to take care of all of your main capital expenses. on that property up front, and those expenses need to be rolled into your financing.
Right.
So when you're doing your numbers, most people have BRRRR calculators. You put in your purchase price, your repair numbers. I can't express that any more than what I try to push out to people. It's like on the BRRRR method, you have to match. The numbers are what rule. Yep. If it doesn't match on the numbers on the rule, you have to let it go. You can't get emotionally involved with it. Oh, let me just do this and not do this one thing, and I can make the numbers work. It's going to bite you. It's going to come around and bite you from a maintenance and a cash flow perspective later. It might not be immediately. It could be a year or two, but that's going to come and it's going to hurt you because you didn't follow the rules. So
let me ask you this. So what were you doing before you got into real estate?
I have a whole other career in IT. I mean, I was the IT geek. And a lot of you can't tell from this podcast, but I'm a disabled veteran. So I'm actually missing my right arm. I was in the Army, kind of got hurt when I was in the Army during the first Desert Storm, got discharged. A lot of people tell me to kind of really push that, being veteran-led businesses and so forth. But I don't know. I guess I don't push it out as much as I can. But having just one hand and being disabled, I couldn't physically compete with people. So I knew early on I would have to be able to beat them mentally. Like I would have to know more than they did or know something they didn't know. So IT gave me that ability because I can work behind a keyboard. I can work a keyboard, type and so forth, but I knew how to do stuff in IT that other people didn't, which is why I excelled at it. But again, people out there are in different fields. I moved from IT over into real estate because it was a hard transition. People talk about those golden handcuffs. You got that nice cushy job. You just show up. It's easy money. You get so many weeks of vacation a year, but eventually there's a lid. You can only go so far until you start working for yourself and then being an entrepreneur. There is no lid. Go as high as you want to go. That's where I made that move to. But to answer your question, I spent about 18 years in IT, doing pretty much anything that you could think of. So I am a tech person.
Gotcha. So what type of mindset shift did it take for you to go from having a job that's paying you a check every 2 weeks or every week or whatever the case may be to being your own entrepreneur, your own boss? Like what type of mental shift did that take for you?
Man, and to be honest, it was scary. I mean, it is scary for a lot of people that were that just didn't start out with that. It's one of the things I love about young people nowadays. I love talking to people who graduate high school in the 18, 19, 20s, year old. I love seeing these people at conferences because they don't get bogged down by that industrial age thinking that we got pounded in our head. Go to college, get a good job, do this, do that. And that's not the way that young people are handling that now. Right. People are like, hey, I can do this. I can become an affiliate. I can sell other people's products. I can create a YouTube channel. I can bring value to people. I can do all these other things, have a lifestyle a laptop type lifestyle where I can travel, do all these other cool things and not have to worry about it. So I love talking to people about that. I love young people and just kind of teaching them about that. But for myself personally, it was just, I knew just something inside of me, I kind of felt like I made this shift when I was 44. So that's about 6 years ago for me now. But so 44 years old, for me personally, at the age of 35, I set a 10-year goal that I'm working for myself by 45. Like I'm quitting, I'm going to have my own business and run it because I knew there were no limits. Because if you work, at least in my field, and it could be the same in other people's fields, whether you're a mid-manager, if you work in insurance, there's a certain level that you can attain and you're not going to go much higher than that. That it's just it. You're going to reach a lid somewhere, no matter how good you are. That's all you're going to be able to do. This is it. This is the most you're going to be able to earn. This is the most weeks of vacation you want to do. You can't live overseas for 3 months at a time if you wanted to and have a job. That just doesn't work. Not in the model that we had. So you can't, that's not even feasible. So the only way you can have that kind of lifestyle is to be able to work on your own, set your own rules, have no boundaries other than the ones you set for yourself.
Now, along with that, obviously you have obstacles, right? So what type of obstacles did you face personally becoming your own entrepreneur?
Oh, but I tell you some of the biggest obstacles I had. One of the things that I've been going through here, I've actually been halting on reading some new books. I'm a big self-help person. I've actually been going back to a lot of the old stuff that I haven't read in 10 plus years. believe it or not, I'm still finishing up the E-Myth by Michael Gerber again. And if that's a great book because it has lays the foundation of how you need to set your business structure up to be the business owner. So you're not doing all the work. You're just managing you could just managing the business. Like if somebody owns a McDonald's, they don't work at the McDonald's. They have a manager and employees and everything else. They just understand how to put people in place, process and procedures, the cost, and how much profit I'm going to make. Getting back to the things that I sucked at is I was always a technician. I always was good at doing the work, but I was never a manager. So then when you started to grow, it's a whole other skill set that people have to develop. When you have to bring on employees, that could even be a virtual assistant. When you bring on a virtual assistant, you have to be a manager to them. So you have to be able to communicate with them effectively. You have to start thinking about company culture. What kind of an environment do you want to have? What kind of benefits you want to bring to people? Those are the things that I was lacking, that I had to sit back. I didn't know that. But those are the things that's like, oh crap, I got to get a handle on this. Yeah. If I want to start growing and I want to start hiring people and I got to start paying for taxes and I got to have all this. I mean, it's a lot to kind of pick up, especially if you've never managed people before. Yep. It's a whole other skill set that I've had to sit back and learn.
Same here, man. I was initially good at doing the work, but now I'm great at delegating because I learned how to do it. You know what I mean? When you don't really have a clear understanding of how to delegate properly. I mean, it took me years to figure it out. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight, but I was under the impression that I could do things better than anybody else. And it was probably true, in my own business's case, but I'd rather, someone said something to me one time. He said, I'd rather do 20% of the work and make 80% of the profit. Right. So, and that just registered with me, where you can get 8 people to do, majority of the work for you and build off of their efforts and be able to operate your business on less time and be able to continue to scale. Once I understood that concept, it really helped me grow my businesses in a different way, man. But, understanding how to do the work yourself can actually hinder you in the long run. Get somebody else that's better than you to get it done. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And then, without having to go in depth about it, another thing is, you have to understand what kind of a person is going to match that role.
Right.
So then you get more into personality typing and profiling and things like that. So you have to understand people that are accountants that want to look at numbers all day, those aren't going to be salespeople, the people. I mean, so you really got to have to understand what I need to have put in place and then define the people and the roles and find the right person for that in order for them to do well at it and to excel. Again, that's a whole other skill set that you have to evolve. But like I said, we could spend a whole show just talking about that alone.
That's a conversation, man. Hey, so look, why don't we jump into some of the rules of the BRRRR strategy, man? Let's jump back to that. I really wanted everybody to get a clear understanding of who you were, and how you got started in this. And the reason I do that is because there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who come from different backgrounds, different circumstances. And sometimes people resonate with other people's story, or your story may be similar to somebody else's story, and they needed to hear that they can be successful in it as well. So I always have somebody tell their story when they come on this podcast, just because I know somebody's going to resonate with that story, man. So moving into the BRRRR part of this particular conversation, going into property management and things like that, what are some of the rules that you were talking about?
Sure. Let me preface it with this. Before we kind of get into the rules here, this is what kind of got me to these rules point is my property management company was founded in 2014. So I actually managed my own property since 2005. That was the first time I bought rental property, and I've just been acquiring, and I've managed properties for 16 years. But at some point, I had done such a great job, made all the mistakes you can make, and finally learned enough to be able to manage the properties myself. Well, so back in 2013, 2014, some friends of mine just asked me to start managing their properties, because I had such a good policy, procedure, and system along with it that I started opening up my own brokerage here and opened up my own business and started doing that. But as I bring on new clients, these new clients are trying to acquire properties using the BRRRR method. And I see not only the mistakes that I made, but I see the same mistakes that they're making or things that they didn't even look for in these properties that they should have asked before they even bought them. And now when they turn them over to me, they just bought a property, and then I go out and like evaluate it, take a look at it, and I'm like, Mr. Client, I'm sorry, you've got $4,000 worth of deferred maintenance that I need you to write me a check, because we need to get these things done. And that's a hard conversation because a lot of my clients are like, well, I just paid X amount of money for this property. I need to start making some money before I give you some money. And I'm like, unfortunately, you don't understand this. These things have to get done. So let's kind of get into the rules of that. So it really comes back from seeing a lot of other investors buy the wrong properties, not ask the right questions whenever they're buying these things, because the whole thing about turnkey properties, if you're buying turnkey, or I know that's a little bit different than using the BRRRR method, but they're just things that you have to ask yourself that are similar in both. So if you're doing the BRRRR method, what are the things that you need to sit back and look out for? Number one, you need to have all of your total expenses wrapped up initially before you refinance. So I'm just going to make that blanket statement, and then we're going to break out into some other things. Like my mistakes I made was there were some properties I knew that I needed to replace the furnace and the central AC unit, but I didn't. So that right there was like a $6,000 mistake that I should have factored that in, and I shouldn't have bought that property if those numbers didn't work. I should have just passed on it. It's like, hey, this deal's not going to work. But sometimes the thing is, it's so easy to say, well, maybe we'll cut the corner on this one property, because it's so close and it's a really good property and a really good school district. I urge you, don't do that. The numbers have to work for you.
Just to add into that, like for us, what we like to do is go in, gut the entire place down to the studs, and almost provide a brand new property, right? Sometimes when you're in a competitive market though, and it's harder to find deals, you start to take on the mentality of cutting corners just to get the deal, but then it comes back to bite you in the long run. Right. So it all boils down to buying the property at the right price. That's what it all boils down to.
Correct. Or buying the property and putting the property costs and the repairs at the certain loan to value of your refinance costs. So that just goes back to very similar, like a Mayo formula that you would use in wholesaling or rehabbing. So It's the same type of formula, but just your calculations have to be a little bit different because this is a property that you're going to keep. You have to think long term. Yep. You can't think the next year, the next 2 years. You need to think 10 years. That's what you need to think. When you're holding these properties 5, 10, 15 years, what am I going to put in this thing that's going to be durable enough for people to live in it and have it absorb normal wear and tear over 10 to 15 years? So those things are like your main capital improvements, your roofs, your gutters. Believe me, people don't pay attention. They pay attention to roofs, but very few people pay attention to gutters until the gutters start messing up, and then they start having a water problem in their house because of all the water not being diverted correctly, that now the basements or the foundations are leaking because they didn't properly drain and have this water go away. It's a common problem, but that's one thing that I commonly see, at least in my area, is you have to make sure all that stuff is working right. The roof, the gutters, water's being diverted, the internal side, your plumbing stack, is that in good shape? I mean, because you can still have some of the older, cast iron type pipes and still have it work fine as long as it's not corroding. But just take care of all the initial problems that you have. If your furnace and water heater are more than 10 years old, look at replacing them. Look at even though they're working fine right now, they could go out at any time. So if you factor what those costs are, put them in there. If those costs still work, do it, because then you're going to have that 10 to 15 year longevity moving forward, where you have like virtually zero capital expense, maintenance items, and all of it is going to be cash flow. Yep. So I mean, these are some of the rules that you need to think about whenever you're buying the property. Just the things that are common, normal maintenance items on the property.
And it's easy to. So, for example, using the furnace as just an example, it's easy to look at the furnace and say, okay, I can replace this part, or I can replace that part, and do that every 2 years. By the time you do that, honestly, you're going to be buying a new furnace. So you might as well go ahead and put the money into buying the furnace up front and eliminate that problem. Number one, you're going to have if you don't replace the furnace, not saying that every house is going to need a furnace replaced, but just listen to what we're saying here, right? If you have a furnace that's, let's say, 15 years old, you might have another 10 years on that furnace 5 years, but that stuff starts to break down. By the time you replace the part, somebody's going to be calling you at 2:00 in the morning saying it's freezing or it's too hot. The HVAC system is out or whatever the case may be. That's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you, $500 to $1,000 just to replace parts on the thing. And then it's going to burn out in 2 years. So you're going to have to do it again. You might as well just go ahead and eliminate the headache is what Ed is saying and go ahead and, defer that headache for 15 years. By that time, you probably done sold the house by then. It just depends on how long you're looking to keep the place.
Exactly.
The point is, do things the right way up front, and it will eliminate the headaches on the back end, right?
Exactly. And here's the biggest thing that I might have mentioned it earlier, but a lot of people have BRRRR calculators where you put all of your finances and you can generate your estimated cash flow. Well, if you do it the right way, your estimated cash flow will become your actual cash flow. If you don't do it right, all these other expenses start coming in there, and that $300, $400 a month cash flow you think you're going to get just got wiped out with a year with a $4,000 furnace that you have to buy 6 months after you just bought it. Now your cash flow is gone, and that's just on one property. Heaven forbid you have other maintenance items on that property or others, so your cash flow is really going to suffer. And if you're looking at that cash flow to provide livable income, that can really affect your lifestyle. So just think about it. Like you said, make sure you do it right, and everything else should be good to go.
So basically, we're looking at the roof. We're looking at all the mechanicals, from plumbing to electric to anything that's going to keep the house in working order. Then we're looking at the cosmetic stuff at that point. Is that how you work the numbers as well?
Well, I missed a couple of things I haven't put in here. I mean, we're talking about furnaces and ACs, but depending on where you're at in the country, you can have oil tanks, you can have boiler systems in your property.
Yep.
So boiler systems, again, they have a longevity. They're a lot more expensive to put in than, but some people like radiated heat versus forced heat, from the moisture that it gives. But all these things just need to be looked at, because the boiler system is going to be expensive, no different than a furnace. If it's old, you might want to think about replacing it. Otherwise, you're going to service it potentially monthly during the cycles that you need it. Every month, you're going to be out there, and it's like, what's that, $100? $100, $150 every month during the wintertime that you're going to need to have somebody service this and take care of it if it's not well maintained. But go ahead.
I was going to say, back when I lived in Pennsylvania, so whenever I had a property that had oil heat, the tenants used to love living in that property because then they can control the heating costs of the property. So it wasn't like having a gas bill on autopilot every single month, and you really can't control that. They could control putting $300 in an oil tank. You know what I mean? So that was kind of weird. Here in the South, I live in North Carolina now. There's more forced air than anything, right? So you have HVAC systems. So it's just slightly different. But like you said, depending on where you live, the cost can vary.
Well, and just some other things to factor in. Again, we talk about things that are very easy, like when, most of the time you're going to be connected to public water, public sewer. But a lot of times if you're in places, that's not always the case.
Right.
So yes, it would be nice to make sure, like, your sewer line. That's another one that's very expensive. I mean, you could be paying, $5,000 to $15,000, to replace sewer lines, depending on what you have a problem with. So if you have a sewer, that's just more or less like a public access to public sewer. Make sure you run a camera down it. Check the scope, check the line, scope it, and make sure everything's good before you buy it. That could be a $10,000 mistake if you have a break somewhere and they have to put a backhoe and dig down 15 feet to replace it. Or heaven forbid, if you have a septic system and the septic system is already 25 years old, that you're going to have to replace it. These are hugely expensive items. So you don't really think about that. You just think you just flush a toilet or water runs out of your shower and it just goes someplace. Well, where does it go? Ultimately, your renters are going to have that particular problem. So you need to make sure these systems are functioning so that you don't even pay attention to them. They work so well that they're just ignored because they never create a problem.
So do you think it's smart to get a property inspection done up front rather than, because we get contractors' estimates, obviously, but in addition to that, do you think it's wise to get property inspections done so that you know everything that's wrong with the property before you purchase it?
No, I would say if you've been in the business and rental properties, especially if you're doing the BRRRR method, a good walkthrough by you is all you need. What a crappy stack looks like. You know what a furnace looks like. Just look at the manufacturer sticker on your furnace.
Yep.
If you can't read it, then it's probably too damn old for you to even deal with, because it's probably worn off from fading. But I mean, you can look at the stickers on these items to look at the manufacturer, creation date to see how old they are. And by looking at them. So you can just do a walk around, but the thing you can't do is you can't look at your sewer line. So yes, I would say if you're going to buy a property and you're serious, pay a couple of $100 and have somebody run a camera down it just to make sure the sewer line is valid and everything works. That's one thing I would do. Or if you have a septic system, have it evaluated. See when the last time it's been flushed, see if it's full, see if it's at full capacity, or see if parts of it is rusted or clogged, because that can be hugely expensive for you to go back and fix that. And heaven forbid you want somebody to have a septic system where they're taking a shower and somebody's running the washer, doing clothes at the same time. And next thing you know, your whole backyard, is just flooded, with stuff. That's not a good thing to have.
Oh man, it's
that's
happened to me.
Money.
It happened to me on one of my properties on a rehab that I was doing. It sucks, man. So, and it stinks too.
Well, and we talk about water. I mean, there's still people that are on wells.
Yeah.
If you're on a well, if you're evaluating that and public access is available, meaning public water, I would say see what it takes for that. See what it takes to run a water line up there and include that in your cost. If there is public sewer, but they just never converted, they just left it on a septic system. That was one of the mistakes I made and got my butt handed to me with a $15,000 bill. I looked at this thing and just thought, well, hey, man, this is in the city, right? I mean, who would have a septic system? Why would I even think that? Mm-hmm. Everybody has sewer around here. That's up to you. So don't get caught on it. Make sure, because I had to, crush a septic system, close it out, fill it in, and then run about, 150 feet around the house all the way to a public, and it cost me $15,000. We had to go under the street to the other side to tap into the main. And it's like, that's an expensive mistake when you're dealing with a $15,000 cost.
Absolutely.
But I made that mistake. That was on me. And that's what I try to tell people. It's like, don't make those mistakes. Look at it, dot your I's and cross your T's, and make sure that sewer's available public, and make sure you understand what's in this property when you evaluate it.
So then you go ahead and you throw the lipstick on the property with the cosmetic stuff, make it look good, but mechanically the house will be sound after it's all said and done. What about property management, man? So what are some key tips that you can provide our listeners when it comes to managing the property the right way, tenants and things like that?
Okay. Well, if let's just take a step back. If you do the BRRRR method the right way, like you're saying, you got them, you put, fresh stuff in there, and you've got new flooring, new everything else, your systems are in good shape. If everything is working in good shape, property management is a breeze. People don't like property management whenever there's, maintenance items and tenants complaining about stuff. Well, if you set things up the right way, you can manage your own properties and do it very well from wherever you are in the world. So your maintenance items are small. So some of the things I would just say, if you're dealing with property management, I cover, and I know it's a little bit of a plug, but besides helping my clients, I also like to help do-it-yourself landlords. So one of my sort of pet projects is veteranlandlord.com. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was kind of cool since I'm a veteran. So just veteranlandlord.com. It's just, I teach people how to do what I call the 5 pillars of property management. If you understand these 5 things, then you are good to go. You can be your own landlord. But if you don't want to do anything in these 5 pillars, then you need to find a property manager to handle that for you. But just, real quick, we're not going to go over all of them, but just you need to know how to market your property. You need to know how to get it in front of people to generate leads and get that thing leased. You need to know the leasing process, how to show the property. How are you going to let people in and out to take a look at it? How are you going to accept applications? How are you going to generate leases? All of that other stuff, because that's going to be required. You're going to collect money. So you're going to have the financial component. How do you keep track of money? How do you do your books? How do you pay your bills? How do you pay your vendors? And all of these things need to be able to be done from wherever you are in the world. You could just think to yourself, if I'm on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, can I run my business? Can I pay my bills online if I have an internet connection? Can I pay my vendors? Yes, if you set things up right. But just the last 2 is like your maintenance and then your legal. Legal meaning things like fair housing law. Mm-hmm. Again, if you're going to be your own landlord, you can't ignore these type of things. I always have to recommend people take a fair housing class. They're like $100. Go through it, learn not necessarily learn what to do, just learn what not to do.
Right.
Like certain keywords or things that you can't put in your marketing, or you can't say to people over the phone that bam will slap you with an instant lawsuit because you discriminated against them. You didn't think so, but you can't do certain things about that. And as long, again, if your maintenance, if you do the BRRRR method right, maintenance should be at a minimum. You should have very little help, but I mean, all you need is just a local handyman repair company. I mean, you could just even use a national franchise, just call them every time. You might pay a little bit more up front, but they're always going to be available 24/7. You're utilizing that service. But again, your call should be at a minimum. And if you did the right repairs on your property, some of the repairs that you're getting called for are maybe even tenant generated. So they created the problem. So whatever you pay for that repair, you just charge it back to the tenant. Because it's not normal wear and tear. They start flushing things down the toilet they're not supposed to, and it gets clogged up. Well, that's a tenant charge. You charge that back to them for the repair because they did something that caused that problem.
That's right, man. So do you recommend our listeners get a property management company right off the bat? How many properties should they own before they start looking at property management companies?
I would say this is more of a, how do you feel about it kind of a thing. I know people that you mentioned yourself, hey, nobody can do the business like you can. So very similar to that, people think, well, nobody's going to take care of my properties the way I'm going to take care of my properties because I love my properties and I'm going to take good care of them. So a property manager is not going to take as good care of them, but it's about delegating. Where do you want to spend your time? What's more important to you? Is it more important to you to take care of your properties, or is it more important to you to find another BRRRR deal or another 5 BRRRR deals this next year? Because now you've offloaded all of that. You've delegated, as you say before, that off to a property manager, which if you've done your job right, getting it reconfigured should be easy to maintain and manage. All you're doing is all those 5 pillars I talked about earlier. All you're doing is leveraging the property manager's system for doing all that. So they collect the rent. They handle the maintenance calls, which should be minimal. If you've done it right, they're responsible for showing the property and leasing it and generating the lease and all that other crap. You don't have to learn all that. You can focus your time on being the investor, acquiring more properties. So really, it's more of a personal decision that you have to make. I can see people doing either way. That's kind of why I love working with people in my property management company, with clients that looking to buy properties and do exactly what we're talking about. But I'm also like to work with do-it-yourself landlords to make sure they don't do things stupid like I did, making these simple little mistakes that all I have to do is point out to them. And now they could be much better financially and running their portfolio more efficient. They're making more money and they're just better at what they do.
Yeah, man. So if we had to provide our listeners with, let's say, a 3 to 5 step process to doing this the right way, what would those 3 to 5 steps be?
For doing the property management the right way?
Property management. I know we talked about BRRRR deals, but let's talk specifically about property management. Okay.
Well, number one, you need to make sure that you understand the 5 pillars that I just talked about. So again, you have to know, how are you going to market the properties? How are you going to handle leasing? And leasing is a lot of different components. That's why I recommend people just go check out my free class that I put out on the veteran landlord. That's going to be available to people. It gives you all the stuff that you need to know. But the leasing, you need to have a great lease. So you're going to have to get that stuff done. You're going to have to sit back and at least understand the laws in your area, not just federal laws, but state and local laws, because local laws can be different. There are some local laws that I have in my city that actually override, I would say override, but or extend upon the fair housing law. That if you don't know that, that whole I'm ignorant of the law stuff doesn't work. If you're a landlord, you are responsible. They expect you to know this. So just know all the components, know all those 5 components that I talked about. If you know that, then landlording is easy, especially if the maintenance part is small. Maintenance is where a lot of people get stuck up on properties, where sending people out or trying to analyze or evaluate the particular component. It's not that hard. Finding somebody, it's just, if you take care of the repairs, hire somebody else that could do that for you, delegate it to them. You may pay a little bit more. So instead of maybe a cheaper guy that would go out there for $100, you might pay $200 for that repair. But you're dealing with one repair every 6 months or a year. So the cost isn't really going to hurt you. The delegation and having that load off of you of having to learn all that stuff yourself is what you're really doing. so you can spend more time elsewhere. So get prepared. Don't go into being a landlord ignorant. Just please don't do that. That's exactly what I did. You don't know what your state laws are, your landlord tenant law. They're different in different states. So know what you're expected to provide and what the tenant's expected to provide. If you don't know that, then you don't know where you stand. You can't be confident of telling somebody this is your responsibility to maintain this if you don't know. So once you're confident, at least understanding what your rights are, what their rights are, things are easy. So it's not unlimited amount of information. I would say it's probably easier than, even rehab, learning how to rehab properties, to believe it or not. You just have to learn a few components, but just figure out those 5 things. Once you figure them out, you can literally manage your properties from anywhere you are in the world, even on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean.
Gotcha, man. Now, obviously, our listeners, we can't cover everything on this simple podcast, but our listeners would want some more information. Now, you did mention veteranlandlords.com. Where else can they find you on social media or something like that? Sure.
I'm just hit me up on Facebook. Edward ODaniel. I'm on LinkedIn too. Those are the 2 biggest platforms that I'm up on. I love helping people. So just hit me up and just let me know how I can help you guys. Because right now, this is an area that not a lot of people cover. Not a lot of people are out there trying to be a sort of a landlord mentor and just making sure people, it doesn't take this isn't like a year-long course that you would have to deal with. Believe it or not, if you learn all these components, the veteran landlord course is maybe 2 to 3 hours to cover all of this. So just take a Saturday, listen to courses. They're so information rich that you will not be bored. And believe me, I don't talk about me on these videos. I don't go over me like these other people do. This is what you need to know. This is how you get it done. Here's some examples of what you can do. To either a free or low cost method is what I try to focus on. Some things you have to pay for, but I mean, a lot of things you can do, you can actually set them up for free if you're a little bit more technical. You understand how to connect things together, but take the time and just watch a course, know what you don't know. I try to tell people it's like people are afraid of being a landlord because they don't know what they don't know. But it's almost like watching a scary movie. When I kind of grew up, with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street kind of movies. Those movies aren't scary if you know what's going to happen.
Right.
If you tell somebody, oh, watch out, the guy's going to jump out with an axe and start swinging and chopping somebody. When it happens, it's not scary because you already told somebody about what's going to happen. Very similar with landlording. If I tell you this is what's going to happen, when this happens, here's how you handle that. It takes the fogginess and the scariness out of the situation and actually makes you more confident knowing when that happens, I know what to do about it. And you know what's going to happen. So that's about the best advice I can give. Once you know that, I mean, you can manage your properties and feel completely comfortable managing them yourself. But again, if you are growing your portfolio, here's where the issue is. If you're growing your portfolio larger, 20, 50, 100 properties, I'm going to be upfront. I mean, I'm a property manager, and that's a revenue stream I get from other people that have rental properties. But if this is yours, you might want to look at becoming a do-it-yourself landlord. Because if you look at the fees, if you have 100 properties and do the math on the percentage rate, anywhere from say 8 to 12%, somewhere in that ballpark is where property managers charge on their management fees. That can come up to a sizable amount of money. That in turn can lead to hiring a couple of VAs or even a property manager yourself to keep those in-house. So, it's up to you. I mean, I've seen it both ways.
Yep.
But all I can say is that for landlords that get started, if you have 1, 2, like less than 5, hiring a property manager could be detrimental.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
because unless you don't do it right, because you're going to be just starting out. And if you have a maintenance issue on that property, you could be going negative quite often throughout the year, unless you do it right. If you do it like what we talked about, using the BRRRR method, getting everything fixed, then you shouldn't go negative. The maintenance should be minimal, or if it is maintenance done, they should be charged back to the tenant for problems that they have. But it shouldn't come out of your pocket is what I mean. So if that's the case, then yes, you can hire a property manager and still be successful, but you must include their property management fees, a reasonable vacancy fee, and even maintenance costs. Figure those up inside of your BRRRR calculation methods. Don't take those off because that could drop your cash flow significantly. and not make it where you need to. So a lot of, I know BRRRR calculators don't include that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to hire, they just say, hey, this is the cash flow if you did it yourself. If you're hiring somebody, you have to make sure that you account for that.
Absolutely, man. So, again, check out veteranlandlord.com. Check out Ed ODaniel on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. There's a ton of information that you guys can consume. And like he said, his course is only 3 hours. You get the information that you need right up front. So make sure you check the links in the description box below. If you're watching this on YouTube, on the show notes, on a podcast, I'm going to make sure you have everything you need, the BRRRR calculator, all of that stuff. Make sure you have all of the information you need in order to be able to be successful at this right away. Now, quick question for you, man. I know you mentioned the E-Myth before. What other books are you reading right now?
Actually, I just went through, one of my favorites, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's an old classic. Yep. But I love going through that one here. I've just gone through just some of Tony Robbins, his old, I can't think
Awaken
of
the
his Awake the, yeah. So I just audible, as I'm out exercising, just kind of listen to those. So I'm kind of in that retro mode right now. It's like I've still got a bunch of books, that I've got up on my bookshelf. There you go.
Audible.com.
But I'm kind of back in that retro mode, because sometimes it's like you forget those core things that you learn when you first start off. You keep learning other things, but you kind of have to reinforce. Like, I'm going through the E-Myth again. I'm pretty close to being finished, but I'm like, man, I completely, I remember hearing that, but you don't really implement it. You don't really think about it, but you're just not at the right stage, either of your business or your life, to sit back and understand it or appreciate it. But that's why you have to listen to things sometimes or read them multiple times, because you may not be ready for the information the first time you read it.
Man, that is so true. You know how many times I went through a book, I could have gone through the same book 10 years ago. I was at a different point in my life, a different time in my business, where I can listen to the same information now. And it's just, it hits home a different way. You know what I mean? It just hits you different when you understand it at the right time in your life. I had this conversation with somebody else a little while back on my podcast, man. And it's just, information plays a different role in your life depending on what you're going through at that time in your life, man. Good stuff, man. Now, if you had to provide our listeners with any last words of advice, what would those words be?
I would say try to consume as much information as you can about the topic that you want to learn, because a lot of it, like with this particular podcast that we're going through right now, you might go through all of it, but remember, all you need to do is pull one piece, what they call one nugget, one little golden trick, whatever you want to call it. That one thing can make the difference. So just like you and I, we spend thousands of dollars going to conferences, listen to a lot of people who are a lot smarter than we are. Sometimes it doesn't apply to us, but other times we look at it and go, that's it. That one, that right there, that idea, I'm going to implement and make me another 6 figures this year. So when you're reading about it, just be ready to accept the information when you hear it, but just consume what you can, pull out all the nuggets, and just make sure you remember it. That's the biggest thing, because you keep getting so many of them. Write them down, keep them in front of you. But that's the biggest thing. Consume information, pull those nuggets out, because those things are what you're going to use to drive your business moving forward.
And just to piggyback off of that, me personally, like you said, I literally pay thousands of dollars on education just to look for the one thing that's going to help me go from where I am to where I want to go. So when you guys are looking to invest in education for yourselves, some people complain that it's a cost for education, but really all you're doing is you're looking for the one thing that's going to help you, that's going to make you 10, 20, 30 times the money anyway. And it's not ever a cost when it comes to education. It's only a cost if you do nothing with the information, right? It's an investment into your brain, into yourself, to be able to go from where you are to where you want to go. So don't ever look at, a home study course or a coaching program or something like that as a cost. It's an investment to help you speed up the process, to tap into somebody else's brain who's been there and done that, and help prevent you from making the same mistakes, because you're going to spend the money one way or another. It's either going to be on the education and somebody guiding you, or you're going to spend 10 times that making your own mistakes. It's completely up to you at that point. So just be mindful of that, guys. I'm definitely pro education. And the reason for that is because I've made every mistake in the book, and I wish I would have had access to the information that you guys have today. So definitely check out Ed on social media. Check out veteranlandlords.com. Check the links in the description box below. Great podcast. We could have gone a lot deeper into a lot of this stuff, but I think Ed's course covered that stuff for us. But in addition to that, if you guys want to have Ed back, maybe we can talk about turnkey rental properties and how that works or something like that. If you guys want to hear an episode on that, let us know in the comment section below. Let us know what you thought about this episode. But in addition to that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell, and be here for future podcast episodes as well. We'll see you guys on the next one.